Chapter 2. A White Heron. One evening in June, a little girl was bringing home her cow. It plodded along, slowing her down. The old cow wore a bell around its neck. Then little Sylvia would have to hunt for the cow, calling, "Cow! Cow!" But Sylvia had all the time in the world. The child had no playmates. When the cow was ready to be milked, it would find Sylvia. Mrs. Tilly, Sylvia's grandmother, was not worried that the child took so long to bring back the cow. She was happy that Sylvia was there to help at all. Everybody said it was because the little girl had spent her first 8 years in a crowded town. But, to Sylvia, it seemed as if she had never lived before she came to the farm. The girl and the cow walked slowly towards the old house. Suddenly, the little girl was filled with fear. She heard something whistling not very far away. The sound was clear and sharp. Sylvia left the cow and hid in the bushes. A young man had discovered her. He called out in a cheerful tone, "Hello, little girl. How far is it to the road?" "A good way," she answered. The tall young man was carrying a gun over his shoulders. She came out of the bushes and began to follow the cow. He walked next to her. "I have been hunting for some birds," the stranger said kindly. "I have lost my way." "Don't be afraid," he added. "What's your name? Do you think your folks can put me up at night? I'll be out hunting early in the morning." Sylvia was more alarmed than before. "What's your name?" he asked again. "Sylvia," she answered, finally. Mrs. Tilly was standing in the doorway when they came into view. The young man put his gun beside the door. He said good evening to Mrs. Tilly. He asked if he could stay at night. "Put me whenever you like," he said. "I must be off early in the morning. But I am very hungry, indeed. May I have some milk?" "Dear sakes, yes," said Mrs. Tilly. The old woman and the young man spoke eagerly at the table. "My boy, Dan, loved to go hunting," Mrs. Tilly said sadly. "I never needed game when he was home. He's a great traveler now. Sylvia takes after him," she continued. "There ain't a foot of ground she doesn't know her way over. The wild creatures count her as one of their own." The guest was thinking of something. "So, Sylvia knows all about birds, does she?" he exclaimed. "I'm making a collection of birds myself. There are 2 or 3 rare ones I have been hunting for 5 years. Do you lock up in cages?" Mrs. Tilly asked. "Oh, no, they're stuffed. I'm an ornithologist. I study birds. I caught a glimpse of a white heron 3 miles from here on Saturday. They have never been found around here." He turned to look at Sylvia. He hoped to discover that the rare bird was one that she knew. But Sylvia was busy watching a frog. "You would know the heron if you saw it," the stranger continued. "It's a tall, white bird with soft feathers and long thin legs. It keeps its nest at the top of high trees." Sylvia knew the strange white bird. She had once seen it on the bright green swamp grass. "I can't think of anything I should like more than finding that heron's nest," the handsome stranger was saying. "I would give $10 to anybody who could lead me to it." His eyes were burning brightly. "I plan to spend my whole vacation hunting for it, if I have to." Mrs. Tilly gave this her attention. Sylvia was thinking of all the treasures that $10 could buy. The next day, the young hunter walked about the woods. Sylvia joined him. He told her many things about the birds. Sylvia would have liked him better if he hadn't had a gun. She could not understand why he killed the birds he loved so much. They stopped to listen to a bird's song. The white heron was nowhere in sight. She found the cow, and the 3 of them headed home. Half a mile from home, a great pine tree stood. the last of its kind. Sylvia knew the tree well. Now, she looked at its great trunk. She thought that if she climbed it, she could see all the world, and the place where the heron had hidden its nest. She decided that the next morning she would climb to the top. Before morning, Sylvia slipped out of the house. She followed the path to the great tree. Sylvia began her climb. Her bare feet and fingers held like birds' claws to the bark. The way was harder than she thought. The sharp, dry twigs cut her. But she must hurry if she were to finish by daylight. The tree seemed to grow longer as she went up. The tree held her while the dawn grew bright in the east. Finally, she reached the top. Before her, there was a vast and wonderful world. Where was the white heron's nest? A white spot like a single floating feather. It comes close at last. It flies above the trees. The heron is perched on a pine branch not far from your tree. He cries to his mate. Just then, some birds fly by and frighten the heron away. She makes her way down the tree. Her fingers ache. She wonders what the stranger will say when she leads him to the heron's nest. Back at the house, the hunter awakens. He is sure that the little girl knows where the heron is. And today, she will tell him. She comes home, her old dress is torn and dirty. The grandmother and the hunter question Sylvia, where is the heron? But Sylvia is silent, even though the old grandmother begs her to tell. Even though the young man's eyes look straight into her own. The stranger can give them money. He has promised, and they are poor. No. She must keep silent. She has spent 9 years growing. Now, for the first time, luck is reaching out to her. Must she turn it away for a bird's sake? She remembers the white heron flying through the golden air. She remembers that they watched the sea and the morning together. She cannot tell the heron's secret. How sad she was when the guest went away disappointed. She might have loved him if things had been different. But she forgot her sorrow when she heard his gun. She forgot her love when she saw the sparrows drop silently from the trees. Were the birds better friends than the hunter? Who can tell? Whatever treasures were lost to her, she still had the woodlands and the summertime. They still bring their gifts and tell their secrets to this lonely country child.